Hey everybody, welcome back. Part 5, producing income in retirement. This is a long series. We got one more after this one. Part 6 is the end. We're almost there, almost there. So, producing income in retirement, reviewing the different types of income and the tools that are out there within each type. So, we're going to jump into the type that is, I guess, misunderstood in a lot of cases. It's the withdrawal income. Okay. Last time we talked about the income that is more passive, that we, dividends that we're collecting. So now let's talk about investments that are good for withdrawal. Okay. These are typically the more stable, safe investments. And what most people have used in their portfolio for the past 30 years or so has been bond funds. Mutual funds filled with corporate bonds. That has been the investment of choice for several decades. I've been screaming from the highest towers as much as I could that when interest rates go to zero, you don't want to be in bonds or bond funds. But bond funds were better than individual bonds because they were more liquid. We could just buy and sell all we wanted. So if we needed some money, they were the stable investment we pulled from, and they had a disconnect from our stock investments. So that was a good thing. But if you understand economics, bonds are not necessarily where you need to be. So then we're going to explore a bunch of the other choices that are out there, and some are very popular right now. I am actually making a video on how popular, record-breaking numbers moving into some of the alternatives of the safe investing world. So when we look at bonds, we do have to understand bond funds. We don't own an individual bond. We own a portfolio of a whole bunch of individual bonds. And so the price of that mutual fund is affected by interest rates. It's the price of the fund is based on the value of the portfolio. So as interest rates rise, the value of those bonds go down. And that's what most people have experienced for the past year and a half, is interest rates rising. Well, the biggest part of this argument is if we see inflation, and every time we see inflation, they're going to raise interest rates. So if you're a retiree, the last thing you want to be in is bonds because of this teeter-totter. You don't want to be in bonds because when they raise interest rates, because we have inflation, you're going to lose money in your safe investments. And when you look at the microcosm of 2022, we saw inflation, you lost money in your stock portfolio, and you lost money in your safe portfolio if you were using bonds or bond funds. So then the other disturbing thing that we're starting to see out there is the raising of the yield in these bond funds. And what we're seeing is with the rise in interest rates, the fast rise in interest rates, these bond funds know they have to attract investors. And if they're still paying 1 or 2% yield in there, everybody's going to leave the bond funds. I mean, people are leaving, but it would have been a lot faster. So now these bond fund yields are doing everything they can to keep up with the rest of the world because interest rates sharply rose. The only way they can do that is fill them with junk bonds. So be very careful if you're going to utilize bond funds as a safe, stable investment that you can withdraw from. You have to actually analyze what that's investing in, because a lot of these bond funds have just doubled down on junk bonds. And we're increasing the yield by increasing the risk in the portfolio. So careful with those. Money market accounts. I'm a huge fan of these things for money that you plan on using within a year or two. Okay. Money markets accounts are FDIC insured bank accounts, but they're with banks that we don't really think of as banks. They're with the credit card companies, right? They're with American Express, Capital One, CIT Bank, which is a big industrial lending bank out there. So there's a bunch of banks out there that are primarily just online banks, but they're still traditional FDIC insured banks. And you can get anywhere from 4 to 5% on most of these. Now, we do have to understand that the interest rates come up and down. They can change interest rates in that account anytime they want. Okay. But it's still FDIC insured. Your choice of doing a 5% money market account or a 5% 1-year CD, look, that's why this is for money that you're going to use. I'd rather have a 5% bank account that I have 100% access to, and it's compounding interest daily, than buying a 1-year CD. So this somewhat renders CDs worthless. This is where you stock away money that you're going to buy a car with, or if you like to have a lot of cash on hand, or maybe you're going to have a down payment for a house, or buy a house and pay cash for it. Great little resting place, but we have to look at it as temporary. Then there's the fixed annuities. So these are simply CDs from insurance companies, and why there's so much confusion out there, there shouldn't be. There really shouldn't be at all. These are fixed interest rate CDs from insurance companies, and that's it. Some people call them MYGAs, multi-year guarantee annuities. It's a fixed period of time with a fixed interest rate. These have always paid higher interest rates than CDs. Even in this world that's all crazy with an inverted yield curve and everything else, you can typically hit the sweet spot in a fixed annuity and get much better rates than CDs. The only difference between fixed annuities and CDs is really not that much. By default, the fixed annuities pay compound interest. That meaning most of these fixed annuities openly pay compound interest, whereas most CDs pay simple interest. And over 5 years, that makes a huge difference in the amount of interest you're getting paid, okay? The other part of this is these are tax deferred. So whereas a CD, if you earn interest, you owe taxes on it. These are tax deferred. You pay taxes only when you choose to pull those gains out. Penalty-free access. Here's a huge advantage over CDs. You're forced into short-term CDs, which right now is fine because longer-term investments don't pay better. But in this case, you're getting 5 years compound interest daily. That's a huge difference. Well, most people don't want 5-year investments unless they can withdraw money. So that's why they give you access. They give you access typically to 10% of the money each year, making this a good withdrawal investment for withdrawal income. Meaning I need a stable, safe place to withdraw from. So when the stock market's going up and down and my passive investment income is not giving me enough, I need something I need to dip into and take principal out, take money out. It can be earnings, that's fine, but these are very efficient for actually dipping in and taking the withdrawals out of. By far, for the most part, the most efficient tool out there right now. And then there's higher interest rates than CDs historically. And by the way, these are guaranteed by the state insurance departments and the backing of the insurance companies. In all reality, you look through history, these are as safe gets. You know, it's easier to have a run on a bank than there is a run on an insurance company. These insurance companies are diversified enough, and if they're a big enough insurance company, our federal government has already proven they're too big to fail. So they come in and help prop them up or part them out and sell them off, which means your policy just gets handed off to the next insurance company. So look, you could scrutinize why banks aren't safe just as much as you could scrutinize why insurance companies aren't safe enough. But historically, insurance companies have been safer. Then there's the fixed indexed annuities. So these two, the fixed and fixed indexed annuities, have no risk of loss. And they give you access to the money. And this is why they are a good withdrawal alternative to bond funds. And this is where the industry has been pushing all the money. Record quarter. First quarter of 2023 blew away the record quarter in 2022. So trillions of dollars are heading into these fixed and fixed indexed annuities. It's amazing how much money is moving this direction because people are finally discovering these and realizing their value and their place in your portfolio. Their place is a safe, stable investment that you can withdraw money from. That's what they are built for, okay? So a fixed indexed annuity is the same as a fixed annuity. It just gives you more than one way to earn interest. It gives you the ability to earn more interest based on the stock market, based on it. Your money's never invested in the stock market. It's just paying you interest based on how the stock market does. So this is still an insurance contract with predefined terms, which is nice. You have a contract that says, here's what I have to do for you, okay? So fixed indexed annuities have no risk. They are not a securities product, which means they're simply an insurance licensed agent that can write these for you. So I try to show these different ways all the time. And so I've kind of started doing this way, trying to explain how these work. So what is indexing, right? That's the first question. Well, you can buy an index fund in the stock market. Okay, you can buy an ETF, an exchange trade fund that follows the S&P 500, right? You own essentially the same thing that the S&P 500 is. Well, the S&P 500 is the index. The ETF you choose to buy simply tries to emulate that index, okay? So the insurance companies, they pick several indices. So there's S&P 500, there's the S&P has a multi-asset index. S&P also has a low volatility index. There's a whole bunch of stock indices out there. And so the insurance company will pick a handful of stock indices and put them in their contract. And then they will pick the math that they can afford to pay you interest based on. Okay, so this is an example of that. Here's the stock index performance in each of these years. You see it's down in some years, it's up in some years, down, up, down, up, down, up, the way the wonderful stock market does, okay? So the insurance company says, well, I'm willing to pay you 95%. This is the math they put in there. Now, a lot of these companies are paying more than 95%. I'm using this as an example, okay? So the insurance company says, when the market's down, by regulation, you can't lose a penny. So you earn nothing this year, okay? So down 24%, you earn nothing. Now the market's up 13.9, they pay you 95% of that. Then it's up 10, 95% of that. Then it's down 9, you earn nothing. And then it's up 4, and then 28, and then 3, so forth and so on. So anniversary, point to point, how did the stock index do? Is it up or down? If it's down, you make nothing. If it's up, they do the math. In this example, it's a participation rate, which means you get 95% of it. What this doesn't mean is that the insurance company is keeping 5% for themselves. Okay, your money is not invested in the stock market. It could say, I'm going to pay you 1% every time it's sunny in Seattle. Okay, your money is not invested in the stock market. That has to be understood. You're not giving up 5%, because then when I tell you the real participation rate, some companies are providing 170%. Okay, so just think of it as math. The insurance company says, here's the indices, and here's the math on how I'm going to calculate the interest I owe you at the end of the year, and that's it. The insurance company, just like the banks on CDs, are going to go invest the money however they want. Okay, then every year on your anniversary, they look at that stock index, they apply the math, they pay you the interest they owe you. That's how these work. So year to year, sometimes you might earn 0, 13, 4, 5, 3, 2, so forth and so on. Okay, but the indexing is not the only choice. They give you several stock index options, but they also give you a fixed interest rate. Oh, I'm out of order here. A fixed interest rate. So here's your current fixed interest rate of 3.5%. So what you'll see here is I have an allocation of 60% in the indexing option and 40% in the fixed rate. And we can change the allocation every year on the anniversary. So 40% in the fixed rate, if the stock market goes down and we earn nothing on 60% of our money, we still earn 1.4%. And that's important to understand, that we have this ability to change. So now we have a safe investment that we can lean on stock growth or we can lean just on a fixed rate, all in the same investment. And that becomes important. And when you allocate at 60-40, this is what you would have earned from 2008 to 22. Some years you did well, some years you didn't do that well, but you never lost. That makes a perfect investment to pull withdrawal reliably. Now, you're not going to wake up and pull hundreds of thousands of dollars out on the moment's notice because you have access to 10%. So if you had 100,000, you can pull $10,000 that year. So you have to have this as part of your plan. You have to understand your liquidity, your access to money, and your needs. And that becomes important in designing a portfolio that's right for you. A bond mutual fund, you can sell the whole thing, but now you know you actually have risk of loss. Whereas these, you can pull a required distribution from here. You can pull just regular, $10, $20, $30,000, depending on how much money you have. But the reality is you're restricted by that 10%. And that's the only part. That's the gotcha. That's oh yeah, I have to account for that in my portfolio. So that's what these are used for. They also give you a couple of bailout provisions. Certainly, if you're in long-term care, most of these companies will give you 100% access. So they'll waive any penalties beyond that 10% access. So they're saying instead of 10, we'll give you 100% if you're in long-term care. And then if you happen to pass away, 100% of the full value goes straight to your heirs. They're not charging penalties on that. The penalties only come in if you break the contract, which means taking more than 10% of the money out in a year. And again, there should be no fees and no risk to your money in these things. Otherwise, there's something else. So hopefully that helps out. That's a lot of the investments that are really positioned and designed for withdrawal, right? We've been using bond funds for 20, 30 years. We've transitioned. Most of this industry has transitioned into things like those fixed and fixed indexed annuities, if they're paying attention. Unfortunately, a lot of the world doesn't pay attention out there, and they just keep doing the same thing that worked last year or the year before, or 20 years ago. Like bond funds, they haven't worked for over 10 years. They have not. Go look at your history on your bond funds. They've done nothing for anyone for over 10 years now. So hopefully this helps. Again, we're talking about lots of different ways to create income. There's 3 different types of income. This was the 3rd of those types. And you should, for flexibility, have all 3 types when trying to fund retirement, unless you're one of the lucky ones and your guaranteed income is paying way more than a happy retirement for you. And I've certainly met a few of those out there, and I consider them the lucky ones. That makes life so easy in retirement. So stay tuned for part 6. Part 6 wraps it all up, applying the tools, kind of talking about how to build this one step at a time. Thank you all. Subscribe, check out the information below, comment, interact, share, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again.